Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, folks, and we're taking a look at the college football ATS scoreboard. By the way, Tommy Tran here. I'm parachuting in late, and this is like the version of the Spider-Man meme where Danny and Brady are essentially tied. It's like you can't be any closer.
Are you in it? We're pointing at you too?
I don't know. I'm the one taking the photo of you two pointing because, I mean, take a look at this. 10-4-1 in best bets. Only, a 2-game difference in the overall and a 1-game bowl selection. So maybe a chance for separation today with the bowl games that we're going to talk about. By the way, 13 bowls down, folks. 30 still left to go. These are the ones that are taking place tonight until the 26th through the Christmas holiday. There are 5, including Hawaii Bowl, always on Christmas Eve in that standalone game. And the only one pitting 2 Power 5 teams together, the Gasparilla Bowl with Mizzou taking on Wake Forest. All right, back here at the fellas, Brady, Quinn, and Danny Kanell, and we'll start with tonight's game, and we're going to try to get to as many as we can. We should, because the guys are actually in agreement on a lot of the games. However, this one is not. Armed Forces Bowl, Fort Worth, Texas. Baylor laying 3.5 and a total of 43 against Air Force. And Brady, I'll start with you. You're going with the Falcons today.
I'm going with Air Force in this one. The service academies are pretty tough to prepare for. Now, obviously Baylor has additional time here because it's a bowl game, but let's not forget, Ron Roberts got fired. Dave Aranda is taking over the defensive play calling duties, and even though that's how he got the head coaching job at Baylor, given his defensive prowess and winning a national championship with LSU and Ed Orgeron back in the day before going to Baylor, this hasn't been the same Baylor defense that we saw last year where they were so much more competitive. I also kind of wonder where the Baylor's mindset is right now. This season did not go the way they had hoped. This is a season where I thought they thought they had a shot of winning the Big 12. Didn't work out that way. So are they going to be as fired up to be there as Air Force, which has a chance now to win 10 games? You know, they actually beat both Army and Navy this year. Brad Roberts is an absolute stud at their fullback position. You'll see him get a ton of carries tonight. This team runs the football as good as anyone. So with 3 and a hook here, I'll go ahead and take those points and be more of the Patriot here and picking one of the service academies.
There it is. He threw that in at the end.
I'm the communist over here going against our armed forces.
That's right.
I am.
You can still change
mentioned
it.
it. No, I'm not changing it. No, I got it. It's all business here. I mean, you got to separate your red, white, and blue on this one. Dave Aranda taking over. You mentioned it. The extra practice where you can specifically focus on Air Force's attack. I think that's the difference. Now, there's no doubt Baylor came limping into the finish, losing their last 3 games. The season fell way short of expectations by their standard, but it's also not that far from Waco. A lot of these players will have family. They'll be able to attend there in Fort Worth. I think that aspect will have them more into it than many might expect. And I think they got more athletes, more horses than Air Force. So I think they have success. I think where we both agree, though, is this weather is going to impact everything all across the entire country. I think a lower scoring game. I think both offenses will struggle to move the football. It's been an issue for Baylor a lot of the season anyway. So I like the under here, too. But I'll go ahead and lay the 3.5.
All right, opposite sides of the spread, but both in agreement on the under of 43. Moving on to the Independence Bowl out in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is on Friday. Tomorrow, the Cougs laying 7 against Louisiana Lafayette. They're ULL. They're 56.5. The Raging Cajun fighting Emory Hunts. Opposite ends here. Brady, I'm going to start with you because you are backing Emory's team in this.
I am, of course, man. Come on, company guy. I'm a Patriot. I like backing some of the guys on our squad. Honestly, my biggest question is how motivated are these players to be involved in this? I mean, both these teams have been hit by a potential transfer portal, opt-outs, for example, with guys like Michael Jefferson, one of the top receivers for ULL in this case, as well as Andre Jones, who's already declared, both those guys preparing for the draft. So I wonder how motivated both teams are going to be given the way their season has gone in this case. But look, it really comes down to the Louisiana defense up against Clayton Tune and his ability to push the football down the field. That's the matchup. I think the Raging Cajuns can keep this one within that number. I don't know how far these two teams are apart. I think 7 points is a bit too much for me. Chris Smith runs the football, controls the game a little bit on the ground against Houston's defense that's been known to give up some yards and points here. So I'm taking the 7 points and hanging out with my buddy Emory Hunt.
Oh, see, I'm mad at Emory Hunt because he guaranteed a victory when Louisiana played Florida State this year. Ask him how that game went over. So I'm going to fade our guy Emory. I'm fading you, Brady. I'm going ahead. And I'm back in the Houston Cougs. Now, again, I think this is where we agree. This could be an absolute shootout. There was a game that Houston had against SMU, 77-63, highest scoring game of the year. Houston's defense is not that good, but Clayton Tune, 37 touchdowns on the year, just 10 interceptions. I think they'll be able to put up the points on Louisiana's defense and a high-scoring affair, I'll go ahead and lay the 7. Take Dana Holgorsen and the Cougs.
All right, another game tomorrow night, the Gasparilla Bowl out in Tampa. Mizzou catching 2 points against Wake Forest, and that total at 58.5. Now, I'm really close to actually taking Mizzou. So, Danny, I'm going to start with you because you like the Tigers in this spot with that short number.
I do. Sam Hartman, where is his mindset with this one? I'm not 100% sure. Is this his swan song? And does he go off into the transfer portal, go somewhere else? What happens? I'm not exactly sure where he is. Eli Drinkwitz, on the other hand, do you remember him throwing shade at Kansas? I mean, there was a lot of conversation that they had potentially dodged Kansas in a bowl. He's got a lot at stake, did get that extension, but I feel like this is just about the strength of the conferences, the depth of the conferences. Wake Forest below expectations this year. Missouri coming in with a little bit more momentum on the back end of this season. I'll go ahead and take the Tigers.
Hold on, say that last part again. You're picking up the strength of the conferences?
Slightly better.
You're betting against
slightly better.
You're betting against the ACC here?
Slightly better.
Like Florida State, Seminole?
Slightly better.
Unbelievable.
Of
for
which
a guy.
Hey, Florida State was 2-0 against the SEC. That's all
I'm just saying, for a guy who's carried the flag for the ACC all year, especially versus the SEC.
All business, though. It's business.
Unbelievable, this guy. I don't even know you right now. I'm on the other side of this one, in part because I'm not worried about Sam Hartman. You know, this is his last opportunity. He's already announced that, whether it be the NFL or another college team after this game, which will be interesting to keep an eye on. He's one of the most prolific passers in college football. He's had a remarkable career during his time at Wake. A.T. Perry's going to play in this game, too. That guy's an absolute touchdown machine. And for Missouri, I'm concerned about their defense. Even though Eli Drinkwitz has done a tremendous job this year, they've got a ton of guys who've already opted out for the draft. For example, Isaiah McGuire, DJ Coleman, Martez Manuel, all opted out of the bowl game. You've got Dominic Lovett, who led Mizzou in receiving. He's already in the transfer portal. So you've got a lot of question marks about where this roster's at. And meanwhile, Wake, maybe one last time to run it back with Sam Hartman. Prolific throwing the football down the field. So this is one where it's not too big of a number. I'm betting on the quarterback play here of Sam Hartman and his arm land the 2 points.
You guys had great analysis, and I just had the lazy SEC over ACC. That's why I thought maybe Mizzou catching the short number would be good. But again, guys on opposite sides of that. Moving on to Saturday, Christmas Eve in Honolulu, the Hawaii Bowl, where San Diego State, we're at 6.5. We'll call it 7 against Middle Tennessee there. The total at 49. Brady, you're going to go with the Aztecs here, and I know a lot of people are laying that 6.5 or 7 in this spot.
Yeah, no, look, I feel good about it from this standpoint. I think they've always been known for their defensive prowess, right? I mean, that's kind of been the MO looking over the past few years. But the bottom line is they've really continued to develop, I think, their passing attack too. And I think that's the difference for me. And traditionally, you know, looking at these two teams, it really looked like more of a San Diego State. They play good defense. They run the football well. Hasn't really been the case this year, though. They're playing good defense still, but to me, they can push the football down the field. When Jalen Mayden's gone in and took over, they've been 5-2 during that time period. He's thrown for over 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns. Just more big play potential, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the 7 points. I think it's a tough challenge for Middle Tennessee.
I'm going to ride the momentum here at Middle Tennessee. Started the season 4-5, won 3 games to finish out the season, build some confidence there in the back end. Chase Cunningham, their quarterback, pretty strong this year. He was the second best quarterback behind Frank Harris in Conference USA. I think he thrives in this atmosphere. To me, this is too many points against a San Diego State team. Likes to run the football, likes to play good defense. I think it'll be a one-possession game. All
right, you're right in the Blue Raiders. By the way, had that marquee win not far from us at Hard Rock against the U, and so that was a nice signature win on their way to a bowl game. And by San Diego State, they're about a minute away from breeding eventual Mountain West champion Fresno State, if not for that meltdown late. Monday in Detroit, we'll see the Quick Lane Bowl. New Mexico State catching north of a field goal against Bowling Green with a total at 49. You guys are actually on the same side this time around, DK. Which side is that?
I'm going to go New Mexico State here. Jerry Kill, after taking over, implementing this program, getting his system in place, really one of those. Talked about Middle Tennessee finishing the season strong. This team finished the season strong as well. Won 6 of their past 8 games. They started a little bit rough, 0-4, but carry some of that momentum into bowl season. One of those. This is one where I think both teams will want to be there. They'll be enthusiastic about playing for a reward at the end of the season. I'll give the slight edge to Jerry Kill's squad.
I'm with you on this one. I do want to talk about Matt McDonald, the quarterback for Bowling Green State. He's had a really long career. In fact, they're not even sure. Scott Leffler talked about it, the head coach at BG, if he's even done. He might actually apply for his 7th year, but started his career at BC, transferred, had to sit out a year back then. That's how long ago it feels in 2019. You had to sit out a year. You were penalized for that before you came to BG, and now I believe he's starting his 29th, 30th game, something like that. But he's had a prolific year, 22 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions as his second season as a full-time starter. Didn't finish great versus Ohio, but I think he'll keep them hanging around in this ball game, and really ultimately, could potentially end up winning it, but in more of a tight game. To me, Diego Pavia, the quarterback, has been phenomenal for New Mexico State the last 2 games. 11 total touchdowns. I know one of those was versus an FCS opponent, and he did get banged up. Though Jerry Kill said he's about 90%, should be ready to go in this one. And Carl Brooks has been a menace, too, off the edge for New Mexico State this year. So I'm going to go ahead and take the points with Danny here.
All right, both teams, by the way, 6 wins on the season, but we saw from that graphic New Mexico State a much better team against the spread. Let's recap some of the early ones again from the 22nd tonight to the 26th. Guys are on opposite ends, though, on agreement with New Mexico State in the under in the Quick Lane Bowl. So that's the recap there for the next few days. When we come back, East Carolina and Coastal Carolina. Grayson McCall's been the topic of conversation, and we've seen a lot of line movement in this one already heading into this game. We'll talk about it next. All right, let's turn our attention now to the December 27th bowl games. There are 4 of them. Interesting how competitive Wisconsin, Oklahoma State will be. No Spencer Sanders or Graham Mertz, both out of this one. New Badgers head coach Luke Fickell telling reporters former interim coach Jim Leonard going to run the defense. OC Bobby Ingram will lead the offense, and that'll be a swan song because Fickell's made hires to replace both of them next season. Tommy Trade here, back with the fellas, Brady, Quinn, and Danny Kanell. First up is going to be the Camellia Bowl, Montgomery, Alabama. Georgia Southern laying 3.5 against Buffalo with a total of 67. Both of you guys on the same page, in DK laying Buffalo, or actually grabbing the points with Buffalo in the under.
The Kyle Van Treese Bowl, if you will. Started his career at Buffalo, played 4 years there, and then, of course, now is the quarterback at Georgia Southern. I'm a firm believer where he wants to beat his old team. It's going to be harder for him to get everybody to buy into that philosophy. Where Buffalo all going against their old teammate, it's a little bit easier for them to gang up here, even though they're an underdog. And it's not going to be easy. Cole Snyder has had a pretty nice season as well for Buffalo. I think they keep this one within the number. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the game outright.
I'm with you on this one. I think it's not only the Buffalo defense, but also the ground attack. Mike Washington, Ron Cook Jr., those guys should be able to keep them in the game. Georgia Southern's defense is atrocious. It's one of the worst we've seen this year. And so they've really had to outscore opponents. I just don't think that's going to happen versus Buffalo in this one. So I'll go ahead and take the 3.5 points here. But like you said, money line might be something you want to look at as well.
So our producer, Jack Capitorto's telling me, lock you up the confetti. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. This is the first one today?
Yeah.
Wow.
I usually associate it like Chip Patterson usually has it on the Cover 3 podcast, and he also has a little like karaoke that goes.
Oh, yeah.
So there it is. There's the confetti for the Lock Unity pick there. Moving on to the First Responder Bowl, University Park in Texas, Utah State. The Aggies catching 7.5 against Memphis and a total of 60 and a hook. Brady, again, both you guys are on the same side here, taking USU.
Yeah, it's about momentum, right? I mean, you talked about that earlier in one of the bowl matchups. Utah State won 5 of its last 7 to get here. Meanwhile, you're looking at Memphis. They've lost 5 of their last 7. So at this point in time, I look at Utah State. They played well enough, and I think offensively, you look at Cooper Legs, too, through the air. 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. It's kind of been up and down. But Calvin Tyler has been able to go over the 1,000-yard mark. He can kind of carry the load on the ground. And Memphis can hang in this one. Seth Hennigan can sling the football around. But defensively, a lot of question marks about that. They also lost their leading rusher in Brandon Thomas due to a knee injury back in November. And so due to that, I think this is one where I feel confident in Utah State being able to cover this number.
I'm with you. 2 programs headed in seemingly completely different directions, at least in this season. Cooper Legos, you mentioned there too, also had his best game in the regular season finale, going over 300 yards the first time. They've also got a pretty good running back in Calvin Tyler, who had 6 games over 100-plus rush yards. I think he'll be a significant part of the game plan as well. So I'll take the Aggies too.
Let's move on to the Birmingham Bowl. East Carolina laying 7.5 against Coastal Carolina, total 62. Before we get to your guys' picks, because this is the topic of conversation with Grayson McCall, who was hurt at the end of the season, did come back against Troy, but lost in the Sun Belt Championship. So the line is like 8 or 9, right? And then Grayson McCall puts out a message on social media saying, I'm going to the transfer portal. It immediately goes to 14 because people think you aren't playing. But they didn't read the bottom of the message, which was saying, actually, I'm going to play this game. Buy back to about 9. But we're sitting at 7.5 now. Just in general, His head coach is not there anymore, but he still wants to play. If you guys were on this Coastal Carolina team, what do you make of the situation for him?
It's a really odd scenario. I mean, kind of similar to what we talked about with Sam Hartman and just the fact that they both were incredibly prolific during their time there. And now they're both talking about, moving on. I mean, especially when you have your name in the transfer portal already, it's already done. And that's when we're like, you might be planning to school against this team at some point in time in the future. Sam Hartman's at least contemplating with the NFL. Different story. It's a little more understandable. This one's really curious, and I'm even more curious from his perspective, Danny, because what happens if he gets hurt? I mean, this is like
He's already been banged up.
in somewhat of a meaningless game before becoming a free agent in the NFL, where you don't have that opportunity to get signed with a team now because something catastrophic happens. So a lot of concern from my standpoint for Grayson McCall in that regard, playing in this game for Coastal. I do wonder, too, depending on what happens in this game, if they get down by a lot, does he stay in? Or does he say, maybe it'd be better to move on with the next guy who's going to be your quarterback in the future? So this is one that's really awkward to me, and especially, too, when you've got an interim head coach and you got your head coach in waiting, right? Tim Beck's going to eventually come in and take over Coastal Carolina, obviously NC State offensive coordinator, but just a lot of awkwardness between this, and it's one where I just think ECU is better set up. Olin Allers has done a good job this season, take care of the football, pushing the ball down the field. I'm laying the 7.5. Too much question marks about Grayson for me.
Yeah, only these circumstances you get in college football today. Like 10 years ago, we didn't have these questions like who wants to be there, who's in the portal, but they're going to stay and finish out the season. I think it's a really weird. Like me, I feel like I appreciate Grayson McCall and him trying to finish out the season with his guys. But what do his guys think? Like, what do his buddies think? Are they happy that he's leaving after the game? Do they want to start looking for the future? I have no idea where they are. So I'll go with the consistency of East Carolina, too, a team that's had some pretty good success this year. Ehlers has been pretty strong at quarterback. They did take NC State to the wire early this season, had them potentially beat on the ropes. I'll take the Pirates here in this situation with too many question marks circling Coastal right now.
It's interesting. I think if you're with you guys playing ECU, you hope maybe that actually there's more buyback on Coastal Carolina. You can even get it at 7 perhaps by the time the game comes, and then you're going to feel pretty good about your bet going into that one. Moving to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Wisconsin laying 3.5 against Oklahoma State at 43. The only thing I can guarantee you guys is there's kind of changes in this game, of course, head coaching-wise, quarterback, as I mentioned. So you guys are on different ends of the spectrum here, though. So, Danny, you're going with the Cowboys in this situation. You like it?
Yeah, Mike Gundy's had a pretty strong track record in bowl games, which is kind of where I'm going with it. But you talk about two of the more underperforming teams on the season relative of expectations of what people thought. Wisconsin could be a Big Ten West contender. Oklahoma State could be a Big 12 championship contender. And then both seasons come unraveling, and now you've got change, which took place halfway through Wisconsin. I'll trust Mike Gundy here in this one. If there's anything I learned, too, last year I learned a lesson. I'll tell you guys a little lesson I learned last year. Ohio State was playing Utah in the Rose Bowl. Ohio State had a bunch of opt-outs, guys that skipped the game, and I was like, oh, they're not going to care. They're not going to want to go. How about the players that do want to be there? I'm going to go with the talented players on Oklahoma State's roster who do want to be there, maybe start looking for the future of this program, that they buy in slightly more with a little bit of uncertainty at Wisconsin's helm as there's a transition of power with Fickell coming in.
Yeah, I don't know if I see it. There's so much uncertainty, right? I think if anything, there actually is certainty of the future. It's just not the guys who are coaching you right now, right? Interim head coach Jim Leonhard, who's acting as DC in this case, is not going to be the head coach in the future. It's going to be Luke Fickell. So there's probably more clarity there. I think it's uncertain what this game is going to look like because of the quarterback play, right? Garrett Rangel takes over for Spencer Sanders, who's in the portal, and Graham Mertz, who's already been in the portal and now is committed to Florida. He's obviously not starting for Wisconsin in this case. And so you're either going to get senior Chase Wolf, who's got like 6 pass attempts this season, or Miles Burkett, which is a freshman. He's got like 5 this season. Here's the one thing I know. That means you get a lot of Braylon Allen. And he's going to play in this game, and that's a good thing. So for that reason, I'm laying the 3.5 points. I think he's the best player on the field between both these two teams. Oklahoma State also lost their leading rusher in Dominic Richardson. He's out, the leading tackler as well, Mason Cobb, on defense. He won't be a part of Oklahoma State's defense. So for those reasons, I just think Wisconsin might have a little bit more intact for two teams that have had a battle with attrition and everything that's happened in the transfer portal and these changes. So I'll lay the 3.5.
And quickly, because of all the changes, that totals 43, which is low for this particular game. And Brady, you lean over here. You like?
Yeah, I lean the over. I think you're going to tend to see a little bit more scoring too. I talked about leading tackler for Oklahoma State being out. Nate Herberg's out too as well. Who's obviously one of the bigger players for Wisconsin's defense. The nose tackle out too. He's already opted out for the draft. I think it's been 6 players total for Wisconsin, who've opted out for the draft. So for that reason, I think I'm looking at thinking this is going to be a game where it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than we're accustomed to.
All right, let's recap the games there on the 27th. Both guys on the same side with Buffalo, same side with the Aggies of Utah State, as well as ECU. Where they do differ is the Guaranteed Rate Bowl out in Phoenix, played inside the Chase Field there. Wisconsin for Brady and Oklahoma State for DK. All right, when we return, we'll talk about Oregon and North Carolina. Ducks open around 10-point favorites, and all the steam is on Oregon in this one. It's ballooned all the way up to 14.5. Our guys are on opposite ends. Find out which side they're on when we come back. Home stretch time here at CBS Sports HQ. We're going to target the December 28th bowl games. Another 4-game slate here. Holiday Bowl opened at 10 at some books very early, but most shops like Caesars open around 14. It's held right around there, 14.5. It has dipped at 13.5 at times. And this game also is the only one that features a total north of 70 out of the 30 bowl games yet to be played. All right, let's finish strong. Brady, Quinn, Danny Kanell here. I'm Tommy Tran, and we're going to talk about the Military Bowl, Annapolis, Maryland. Duke laying the 3 against UCF at a total of 62.5. Both of you guys are on the same side on this one with the Blue Devils. DK, I'll have you go first.
I tell you what, Mike Elko has done a phenomenal job, and he's gotten a lot of credit for it. ACC Coach of the Year, the job that he's done at Duke. I mean, a chance to have their first 9-win season since 2014, and it felt like the program had really tapered off under the last couple of years of David Cutcliffe. For them to be this competitive this soon is a remarkable, and it's a testament also to Riley Leonard, their quarterback. He's one of 5 quarterbacks in the season with 20-plus passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns, at least 10 rushing touchdowns. They've been an offensive force, even though Mike Elko's got the defense playing pretty well too. And with UCF, I think it's going to be a letdown game for UCF. This is a team that had their sights set on potentially a New Year's 6 game. They ended up not winning the conference. They fall just short of that. I feel like this is a game Duke is going to rise up to, and you might get a little bit of a flat performance from UCF. So I'll take the Blue Devils.
I'm with you. I love what I've seen from Duke's offense, really what Mike Elko's done with their defense, too. Only giving up 23 points per game. And look, UCF's going to be a challenge. John Rice Plumlee got hurt late in the season. He's now scheduled to be out for this one. Mikey Keene's in the transfer portal. So they're talking about a third-string quarterback having to take over, or they're going to have to lean on their rushing attack with R.J. Harvey and Isaiah Bowser at the running back position because John Rice Plumlee was actually the leading rusher. So it's a big loss that he's not out there. A lot of inexperience going up against a Mike Elko defense is never a good thing in this case. So I'm with you on this one. I think you laid the 3 points there with Duke.
All right, moving on to Liberty Bowl. By the way, the Duke-UCF game, one of the rare 3 flats that we're going to see. Liberty Bowl is actually another one that we have a flat 3. Arkansas laying that 3 against Kansas with a total of 69. Both of you guys going with the Razorbacks, and Brady, why is that?
Well, in part because of their rushing attack. I mean, I am expecting K.J. Jefferson and making this a bet to be a part of this rushing attack along with Rocket Sanders. I mean, look, this Arkansas team is physical on both sides in the trenches. I think that's going to be the difference in this one. Not that Jalen Daniels isn't capable of putting up a lot of points. If not for the shoulder injury, he may have been a dark horse for the Heisman this season. He was absolutely phenomenal. I think you give the entire coaching staff credit, too, for the creativity that they showed. But defensively, it's just going to be an uphill battle. I think they're going to give up a lot of yards, in particular in the running game, and points as well in this one. It's going to be hard for them to keep pace versus a pretty solid physical Arkansas team that, the record may not reflect it, Danny, but they hung around in a lot of games this season. They had a tough schedule.
They were extremely competitive. Remember the Texas A&M game? We're right there. The LSU game, they had LSU on the ropes. I think this is just about a roster that's deeper than Kansas' roster. And Lance Leipold has done a phenomenal job. And their win total was 2.5 this season. They went over that early this year. Came limping a little bit as they got into the heart of the Big 12 schedule and they faced some better, stiffer competition. But I think this is one where Arkansas, with K.J. Jefferson running the football and Rocket Sanders, will be able to impose their will somewhat on Kansas. Very much of a ball control game. So I'll go ahead and lay with the 3 with Arkansas as well.
Much like that LSU game for Arkansas, the health of K.J. Jefferson would make a difference in the spread, which we saw like 30 minutes before pregame in that one.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, Oregon, north of 2 touchdowns, 14.5 there against North Carolina, the total at 73. You guys are on opposite ends here. Danny, you're going to go with the Tar Heels grabbing the points.
Yeah, I had a nice man crush on Drake May, and then it kind of came falling apart there as they faced better competition. But I still have a tremendous amount of confidence that he's going to keep UNC in this game. Now, I love the 14 and a hook here. Getting that extra half point may be the critical difference because Oregon brings a tremendous amount of momentum into this game as well. Bo Nix is coming back. They just had a massive recruiting day. This program looks like it's headed in the right direction with Dan Lanning. But I also think Mac Brown is no slouch. And I think, even with the transition with Longo leaving the program, I still have more faith in the offense with Drake May at the helm. So I'll go ahead and take those points. It's just too many for me in bowl season with a team that I think will want to be there and will show up to compete.
My favorite bet on this one, though, is the over, which we both agree upon. And that has nothing to do with the fact that both offenses can score points. It's because UNC's defense is awful. And by the way, Oregon's isn't much better, okay? They've got some issues in their secondary, giving up a lot of big plays too in the passing game. So this has all the feels of the track meet. The only difference for me is I think you just got more talent on Oregon's roster, and in particular on defense to be able to come up with some stops. I think their defensive front, too, will be able to get after Drake May from time to time. So I'll lay the 14.5 points here. This number seems bloated, but it's there for good reason. Oregon's got a lot of momentum right now. Their quarterback's coming back. Phil Knight's over there writing checks to flip recruits on signing day. So I'm sure there's a lot of momentum building up at this point. But I think the over is the best bet.
You referenced it, Brady. What about what we're seeing here? Bo Nix, Dan Lanning's first year, of course, started off with that game against Georgia. Thought that they were having a track to get to perhaps the Pac-12 championship game, falling a little bit short here.
Yeah, I think, the odd thing is, and we talked about, if you go back and look at what Southern Cal did, too, in the offseason, all the transfer portals, it didn't matter. Still couldn't win the Pac-12, couldn't get the college football playoff. Caleb Williams obviously won the Heisman, and incredible progress from where USC was a year ago, but even for Oregon, too. Like, we look at all these teams who've written all these checks and write all this money to get recruits out of either the portal or who are coming out of high school. And at the end of the day, it hasn't equated to wins. Look at Texas A&M right now.
Right.
Look at Miami. As good as the class was, didn't work out this past year. So short term, we'll be curious to see where this goes for Oregon. But bottom line is they should win this game. I was more curious that Bo Nix decided to come back.
Me too, but I think it's great for college football. Sure. Like as much movement as there is, and as many times in the past, we might have seen a quarterback try to make the jump for the NFL just so he could get a 5th or 6th round signing bonus. Now you see quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels returning to LSU, Bo Nix going back, Drake May staying at North Carolina. There are some programs that are actually getting more stability with some of the rules that are in place because they're either able to retain their quarterbacks through NIL money or they're able to stay in school another year as opposed to leaving a year early. So I think Oregon's going to come in as a very trendy pick, possibly in the Pac-12 to knock off USC.
We saw the strength of the Pac-12. Every team beats every team for a chance. Kalen DeBoer, Washington, also a nice surprise. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Let's finish up with the Texas Bowl out in Houston. Texas Tech grabbing 3.5 against Ole Miss in a total just south of 70 at 69.5. Danny, you're going with Ole Miss and Lane.
I am. Yeah, Ole Miss, where's their signature win of the season? Like, they need to capture some momentum going into the offseason. Losing the Egg Bowl, of course, was one of many there towards the end of the season. But I think this is one where Lane Kiffin's got to feel a little bit more of a sense of urgency showing up to this game. And Texas Tech is not going to be an easy out. But I think this is one where they get that run game going because this offense, as much as we talk about them throwing the football, is built on physicality. I think they'll be able to control the line of scrimmage and get this win.
Two teams with different momentum. Texas Tech won their last 3 to finish. Ole Miss lost their last 3. So this one's easy to me. You stop the run, you stop the offense for Ole Miss. And I think that's what Texas Tech is going to do in this case. So the 3 and a hook, and the hook really got me here. That's where I'm on the side here of Texas Tech. So I'll take the 3.5 points.
Got about a minute left here. Before we go, real quickly here, what have you guys learned through the first 13 bowl games that we've seen so far of people that have been betting?
Wait until the day of the game, folks, before you lay these bets on the spread.
Or
that's my piece of advice. You just do not know.
Agree with you. Or better yet, if you like to live bet, I mean, you see some teams, you watch it. South Alabama, then we're watching them, and you see their defense look like they didn't show up. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, I can get a dog here at some value. I think live betting's the way to go, but absolutely wait as long as you can. Both are very good points. And again, we're getting to the better bowl games and eventually the national semifinals and, of course, the CFP. Our thanks to Brady Quinn and Danny Kanell. Guys, thank you very much. We just saw the recaps, of course, of the bowl games happening on the 28th, and then on demand we'll have all the games 22nd through the 26th, the 27th, and then the 28th. I'm Tommy Tran. More CBS Sports HQ coming right up. We'll see you soon. There's no opting out of this show, baby. No. We're all in. I'm opting in. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Yeah.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.